this kind of aggressive phallic press. Yeah. That it doesn't. Okay, whatever. No.
The water's right there.
Perfect. So.
Okay.
I will start. Did you see Marx Brothers Night at the Opera? When the guys have to give speeches, then and the one joke is the guys have to deliver speeches. They don't know what, so they use this water and they drink more. They go on drinking, so they're tempted to do
Okay. All right. Well, welcome. I'm Jennifer Williams from the Department of English here at Calvin. And on behalf of the Center for Christian Scholarship, the Office of Multicultural Affairs, the Office of the Provost, the Department of Communication Arts and Sciences, the Department of English, the Department of Philosophy, the Department of Art History, and the Meta-Nexus Institute's Local Societies Initiative, welcome to Calvin College and the lecture by Slavoj Zizek. A couple of brief announcements first. There is an overflow room if you don't want to sit on the floor. It's over in the seminary chapel, and there's some kind of closed circuit thing so that you can still hear and experience the whole lecture. But you're welcome to continue to be a fire hazard if you like. It is a full room, so if there are any empty seats in the middle, if you could consolidate so that those empty seats are now on the outside, that would be nice. Tonight's lecture is being recorded. If you're interested in finding out how to get a copy of that, please make sure you put your name down on, we have a pad of paper that says recording signs up. There's one on both of these main doors, so please make sure you put your name and information down. And then finally, we were just curious to know who you all are, so rather than have us all go around the room and introduce ourselves, there are sort of sign-up books at both sides. And again, we would just love to have your signature just as a record of you being here. My first encounter with Žižek's work occurred back in grad school, where I suppose all these things began. I was trying to use Kierkegaard as a theoretical model for an argument about modernism that I was trying to make in my dissertation. And one of my advisors was just absolutely adamant that such a thing could not be done. And she said that to have a dissertation with Kierkegaard, Gertrude Stein, and Conrad would just be weird. And as you can tell, I'm scarred for life. So I spent many days poring, over books and articles and all kinds of things to see if I could find that perfect quote that would allow me to link all these things together. And one night, a friend of mine from grad school, Jim, emailed me. He had found a page from The Ticklish Subject and had typed it out in its entirety in the email. To my delight, there enough, on page 211, Žižek makes the connection between Kierkegaard and modernity that I was seeking. So I wrote back to Jim, this is great. This is great, but what does it mean? What does Žižek mean? To which Jim replied, and you'll excuse me, who the hell knows? But if Žižek is writing about Kierkegaard, then you know it's important and you can do it too. And this is a same friend, I should say, who was given a T-shirt by his then girlfriend, now wife, and the T-shirt had the initials WWZS. What would Žižek say? And Jim told me later he almost proposed to her, like right on the spot, right there. Much have been said, of course, about Žižek's use of pop cultural references alongside these sort of major philosophical works. But I find that that's something that really is delightful about his work. And one of my favorite features of The Fragile Absolute is that I can think of no other work in which Keanu Reeves and Hegel share the same page in an index. But most importantly for me in my work is Žižek's engagement with Christianity and the Christian tradition. Žižek's claim about the radical ethical and political capabilities of what some have declared to be the most foundational and universalist of all foundational and universalist traditions, Christianity, are very invigorating. In grad school, it was my experience that nobody talked about Christianity unless, of course, you wanted to critique it. And even when philosophers like Jacques Derrida or Alain Badiou would talk about Christianity, it was because they were making religious turns in their old age, as opposed to seriously interrogating the work. But not Žižek, and all of this from an avowed atheist to boot. Just to conclude, Stanley Fish recently reviewed Wendy Brown's book, Regulating Aversion, Tolerance in the Age of Identity and Empire for the Chronicle of Higher Education. And in that review, Fish concludes by stating, Brown's account of how liberal tolerance, and therefore liberalism, works is nuanced embracing. The fact that her analysis does not, and in my view could not, deliver a program for improving the world, or even a set of reasons for rejecting liberal tolerance, makes it no different from any other effort, always doomed to derive a politics from the discourses of postmodernism, anti-essentialism, and anti-foundationalism. The title of tonight's lecture, Why Only an Atheist Can Believe, Politics Between Fear and Trembling, leads me to think Žižek may have something to say about such claims. So without further delay, please join me in welcoming Slavoj Zizek.
Thank you very much. I'm really glad to be here. Thank you very much for this nice, maybe too nice introduction. What I mean is the following. When I hear such gentle and nice words, I always start to look behind my back, like, who is that real me you were addressing? No, like, it's too much for me to recognize myself in it. And now comes the evil point, that the name of this gap between what I experience as my immediate self-identity and the symbolic identity that constitutes my public image, that acts that you were describing, the name of this gap in psychoanalytic theory is symbolic castration. So thanks very much for a castrating experience. Good beginning. Okay, but let's go on in a little bit more serious way. I hope you will not be bored. The beginning is a little bit more difficult than maybe things happen. Okay, I would like to begin with something probably known to most of you, maybe all of you, two Hollywood productions released to mark the 5th anniversary of the September 11th. Paul Greengrass's United 93 and Oliver Stone's World Trade Center. The first thing that strikes the eye is that both films try to be as anti-Hollywood as possible. They both focus on the courage of ordinary people with no glamorous stars, no special effects, no grandiloquent heroic gestures, just a terse, realistic depiction of ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances. It is, however, this very touch of authenticity which raises, I think, some disturbing questions. The first thing one cannot but note is how both films tell the story of an exception. United 93 is about the only one of the 4 kidnapped planes in which the terrorists failed, which did not hit its destination. World Trade Center tells the story of the 2 of those 20 or so policemen, firemen, who were saved from the rubble, from the ruins of World Trade Center. The disaster is thus turned into a kind of triumph, most notably in United 93. Here, a comparison with Spielberg's Schindler's List is instructive. Although I think Schindler's List is a failure, the idea to choose Schindler as a hero was a correct one. It is precisely by focusing on a German who did something to help the Jews that one demonstrates how it was possible to do something, and thus to condemn those who did nothing, claiming that the regime was so totalitarian it was not possible to do anything, and so on. In United 93, on the contrary, the focus on the rebellion serves the purpose of preventing us to ask the truly pertinent questions. That is to say, let us indulge in a simple mental experiment. Let us imagine both films, United 93, World Trade Center, with the same change. Let us say that instead of United 93, we would get a film called American 11, you know, the name of another flight which did hit its target. Or let us imagine World Trade Center remade as the story of 2 of the firefighters or policemen who did die in the rubbles of the Twin Towers after postponed, prolonged suffering, without in any way justifying the terrible crime or showing an understanding for it. Such a version would confront us with the true horror of the situation. It would thus compel us to think, to start asking serious questions about how such a thing could have happened and what does it mean. The second feature, both films restrain not only from taking a political stance about the events, but even from depicting their larger political contexts. That is to say, neither the passengers on United 93 flight nor the policemen in World Trade Center have a grasp on the full picture. All of a sudden, they find themselves thrown into a terrifying situation and they have to make the best out of it. This lack of what Frederick Jameson would have called cognitive mapping is crucial. Both films depict ordinary people affected by the sudden, brutal intrusion of history, with a capital H, the invisible real that hurts. All we see are the disastrous effects. So that in the case of World Trade Center, one can easily imagine exactly the same film in which the Twin Towers would have collapsed, not because of the terrorist attack, but due, let us say, to a strong earthquake. Or, even more problematically, we can imagine the same film, the same narrative at least, taking place, for example, to be really evil, in a big German city in the winter of 1944, after a devastating Allied bombing. Or, even more evil surmise, what about the same film taking place in a bombed high-rise building in southern Beirut during the last Lebanon-Israel conflict? And that's the point. It cannot take place there. Such a film, taking place in southern Beirut, would have been immediately dismissed as a subtle pro-Hezbollah terrorist propaganda or something similar. What this means is that the two films' message, ideological, political message, resides in their very abstention from delivering a message. This abstention is sustained by an implicit trust into one's government. When the enemy attacks, one just don't think, do your duty. This is what I call Britney Spears' theory of